welcome back to the show. Black women and American Indian and Alaska Native women are 3 to 4 times more likely than non-Hispanic white women to die from pregnancy-related causes during pregnancy, birth, and up to 1 year postpartum. Now, the United States is facing a maternal and infant health crisis fueled by structural racism, driving significant racial disparities in maternal and infant morbidity as well as mortality. Joining us now, we've got the founder of lead advocate at the Federation for International Gender and Human Rights, Dr. Ameena Ali, who joins us once again. And Dr. Ali, as always, a pleasure to have you back with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Daren. It's a pleasure to be here.
And when we talk about these statistics, they're pretty alarming. Bring us some insight on this.
Okay, well, they're not good statistics, and they're definitely not ones that I'm proud of here recently. However, the solutions are coming forward. We have a staggering number of women that are coming into maternal care, maternal health care, reproductive rights, and social rights that are determining their maternal outcomes. And these women are not getting the care that they deserve. Why? Because they're not specialized in offering the care in Western or modern medicine. These are very general cookie cutter procedures that are not specific, whether it be cultural, social, or identifiers to their orientations for birthing people. The BIPOC community, the Black and Indigenous people of color, and those that birth in those demographics are even more at risk. We are 4 to 5 times more likely to have a bad to tragic birth outcome than any other demographic on this planet. And that number has to change.
So when we talk about these statistics, let's talk about some of the options that are available. First of all, before we talk about options available, let's walk back on this. When we look at these statistics and we see the disparity in the numbers, what can we identify as potential root causes here?
Okay. Well, first of all, the system wasn't built for us. That's just that out there. The pink elephant in the room is it was not designed for us. We were just guinea pigs in it. And just know from the Tuskegee experiment to the father of obstetrics who used slaves and felt as though that we didn't have feelings, or because we were such industrious workers, we dealt with pain differently and we didn't require anesthesia during surgeries. All of the misnomers that are still carried over in subterfuges of the disparities, such things like when we come into the emergency room, we have people that assume that we are using the emergency room as our primary care physician. They believe that if we're under insurance, or we are underserved in the insurance factor, that we come in with ignorances about our health and the things that we know. So they come in with this godlike demeanor to them that allows them to believe that if we walk into the hospital, that we must listen to what they say, because they're the boss, they're the medical professionals, and they are the ones in control, rather than doing this as a mutual thing, trying to breed their culture, the adaptation, the religion, even the demographics of where you live in the city into your care. It's very cookie cutter, very intentional to do as I say do and pray for the best at the end.
Yeah, there's a cultural competence I think is really lacking. I think some of the ways that we can talk about this is when we deal with community-based birth workers. There is a space for the workers. The workers are doing the work. They got boots on the ground. Give me the importance and how they can bridge the gap.
Okay, well, birth workers, first of all, are godsends. They are just magnanimous angels that have been ascended. You have to know the understanding of the calling of a birth worker. And this is very, very important because it sets up the mindset of those that come into this field. You don't hear girls growing up when they grow up. You don't hear them saying, well, I want to be a midwife when I grow up. You don't hear that conversation. You don't hear those words. You definitely don't hear the demographic of them even saying, I want to go into obstetrics for the specific purpose of reproductive justice. You just don't hear those conversations. Now you're starting to see young girls playing with dolls, and you see them with the satchel in front of them breastfeeding and mocking moms that are breastfeeding, and you're seeing that happening, but they're still infants. So what we are seeing in that is to understand that birth workers are called. This is a calling. This is not, has not, and will never be a career field. It's only when you put it into industrial medicine, turn the nurses into this, and make it into this whole westernized Industrialization is where you turn the tide from care to solutions. So that's one. Two is understanding that these women and men, especially those that are doulas and coming into the ancillary pieces of it, are coming into this simply to help. That is the only measure that these positions even pose. Being a doula is supportive work. It is supportive care, and it is designed to support the mother. Just simply becoming a doula has a whole different mindset that's attached to it. You come in knowing that you are going to support this woman from preconception to prenatal to postpartum and everything in between, from culture to language to liberties. You are doing this for the woman. Then you have to understand that they are a part of a team. There's no I in team. So just like there's no I in pregnancy, there is a huge piece that is coming together as this baby is coming forward. This is the true root of the term when they say it takes a village to raise a child, because it's not just the rearing of the child, it is the bringing forth of the child. And it takes everybody in the village to be a part of it. So the birth workers in their angelic form understand this coming into work every single day. And this is a support that we need to replicate and make content on. If you want to do something on Instagram, let's make content for that and bring that forward and make that a household word.
You talk about birth workers. I want to talk about mothers for a moment, because I think there's also this importance, right? When you talk about mothers in planning, and that planning phase, and creating a birthing plan. Give us more about the importance for a mother in creating that plan, and what should that mother actually be looking for when creating a plan?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a plan. So anything is apt to go wrong without further notice. So it is a guiding post. We don't want to hold too tight to the plan, but we want to be firm in our principles of the plan, the intention, and the reason behind it. In formulating thousands and thousands of birth plans over my career, I can honestly say the first thing I say after what is your name and date of birth, do you have a birth plan? And it is very incorporated into getting to know you as the birth plan is. Why? Because I want to know if you're an indigenous person. Knowing your name and your date of birth is fine. But if I know you're an indigenous person, you may not have certain criteria I even have to delve into. I know family is involved. I know tribe is important. I know lineage and legacy is going to have a weight. I know it's not going to be just you in the birth room. And I also know that you're going to come with your own traditions and cultures and things that you're going to bring with you. So I won't have to ask who's going to be in the birth room. I'm probably going to have to say, how many people are we going to allow in the birth room? And then there's going to be a thing where I'm going to say, what is mom's role? What is grandmom's role? What is other grandmom's role? And what do you think are great talents in this? So all of this is incorporated on top of going from a natural birth to a home birth to a hospital birth, a birth center birth. Trying to make sure the doula is incorporated. Who's going to be in the room when you're actually in labor? Are you going to labor at home? Are you going to be in the hospital when you labor? Or are you just going to physically birth? So the birth plan can choose anything from the scent of the candles to how long family and friends stay around and everything in between. So it is very, very important to make sure that you do this for the entire pregnancy. I always say you have 10 months to put this together. So it should be phenomenal when I get it, by the time I get it at the end.
You talk about doulas, and we haven't spoken about them yet, but they're a very important part of that birthing plan, the doula and the midwife. Speak to us about their importance and their role in the process.
Yeah, at 30 years as a birth worker, I have never gone into a birth without a doula. Yes, and there's a period at the end of that intentionally. That is how—
or exclamation point, I think, right?
Right, absolutely. And there's a reason why there's a pause, because that well-timed pause is to let you listen to that again when you replay it in your mind. I would not go into a birth without a doula. So anyone that's around me is going to be infused with the power of the doula. I've even had times when I'm in the car downstairs getting my stuff out of the car and the doula is on the phone with me saying, I see a head. And I'm like, by the time I get this stuff on that third floor, you're going to be birthing babies. So it's one of those things where she's going to be so empowered in her space that she may have to catch, and I just do paperwork later. And it's one of those things that's, again, it's not intentional. You never know when babies are going to come. But the idea is that she's going to be empowered before she gets there. That is how strong I value and I enrich my doulas. I currently have the Grace, Gracee, Doula Academy. There are 51 different types of doulas that we teach, orchestrate, and instruct. And we have these doulas in different fields. We have grand doulas, which are grandmoms that help you on postpartum. We have birth, prenatal, and labor doulas. We have doulas, we have a disability doula, which is ones that if you're in a wheelchair and you're birthing, you have someone that counters you. How about if someone is ill in nutrition before they get pregnant? We have a nutritional doula. We have doulas that deal with movement. Let's say you're in a car accident and you're dealing with back pains or you're paraplegic, quadriplegic. We have doulas that come in and will allow you to experience a pleasant birth experience on your terms based on that birth plan that you have and allow you to birth your way. And the 51 types of doulas that we teach is because each of those doulas are actual true doula cases that were needed in that time. And we use that as the fulcrum to develop a curriculum to train doulas in those specialties.
Walk me through this, because we talk a little bit about the work of a birth mother. We talked about having that birth plan and doulas and doing it at home or in another location. But a lot of people are saying that there is some concern when it comes to hospitalization, when it comes particularly to African-American mothers and hospitalization. How do you analyze or critique hospitals when it comes to the care for African-American mothers?
Well, I'm a forensic midwife. I like to call myself that because I go real far back when it comes to the pathology of this craft. If you remember, and I'm just going to take you back just a minute, either you or someone you know has either birthed a child at home or is a home birth child. If you're over the age of 50, 60, or 70, you were probably that child. Here's why. If you remember back in the day, your grandmother, great-grandmother, depending on how old you are, had 15, 16, 18 kids. 9 times out of 10, they weren't rich enough to go to the hospital and be cooped up in the hospital. I know my mother was birthing me at home until she realized I was 4 weeks overdue and realized that I was due July 4th and I came August 7th. So knowing even back there in the 60s and 70s that, it wasn't an exact science. So knowing that is to know home birthing is a part of the BIPOC community. And this is very, very relevant. When we were back in the indigenous days of slavery, we were having babies in outhouses and huts. Look at the movie Color Purple. You didn't see Celie going to the hospital. And I use that fact to let you see that back in the day, we had midwives. And you see even her best friend was the one that birthed her baby. She wasn't even a midwife, but she was there birthing that baby. So to know that this is a part of who we are as a heritage, this is a part of who we are as a people. We were trained to be tolerable of our health and wealth subconsciously. We had to stay healthy because we were birthing all these babies. Likewise, when we came into the age of the industrialized medicine, we were birthing and nursing other babies. Remember that time? When we had other people's babies and we were wet nursing white babies and non-melanated babies, we'll just say that. And we were doing that because we were able to. There was no science, there was no class, there was no degree that we had to get. We just knew our milk was a little bit more enriched. Our babies didn't have brittle bones, and they realized that if that baby didn't have brittle bones, let's put our baby on her breast so our baby won't have brittle bones. And it was just an understanding. Now here it is, all of that knowledge, all of that wisdom, all of the integrity of what we knew back then has been lost to technology, industrialization, as though it never worked. So one of the things that I look at in this is I'm like, why can't we take what we know works and then industrialize that? Why did the hospitals drop midwives and said my grandmother was a midwife, never made it past the 3rd grade. But if she tried to birth right now, she'd go to jail for practicing medicine without a license. What? She birthed 6,200 babies in her career. And knowing that that's almost a zip code and only lost 1 child, and that was due to leprosy. Oddly enough, let's go back with that disease. Lost 1 child to leprosy is to know that worked.
Right.
And not have a track record like that and not have some truth to that. Why did we lose that? And why did we take that out of the circular call of modern medicine? That's the question I have, and no one has been able to answer.
You talk about losing a baby. That brings the topic of maternal mortality. I want to talk about that because this is a number that we're seeing that's pretty alarming. But give us some statistics and give us your insight.
Okay. Well, first of all, 99.99% of the time, the deaths of the baby or the mother is preventable. You can't claim modern westernization of medicine. You can't say how high tech and how developed you are as a country, and you're losing women and babies at such staggering numbers. You can't claim that. Stop saying you're an expert in OBGYN, and then the next time we see you on the news, you've lost a Black mother to an avoidable ailment. Stop saying that you are this chief of something, and then with all of your chiefdom, you couldn't find so many Indians to stop the death of this woman who was healthy 5 minutes ago. So when we see these things and we understand these big titles and big labels, we have to understand there's accountability to this. And when we see this, we see these numbers increasing because of the lackadaisical mindset of these quote unquote experts. We have doctors with more letters after their name than before it, and they want you to trust them because they're in the room. I'm not going to trust you unless what you're doing in the room is going to save my daughter. I'm not going to trust you if what you're doing in my room is causing my daughter some ill. And I'm definitely not going to trust you just because you walked in. So this is where we have to come down off of that egoic God complex that we have in medicine, very prominent, very instilled. And we have to get back to what works. We have to look at warning signs, and we have to be effective every time a woman needs us. Now we talk about, oh, well, Dr. Ameena, we have this thing where we can't be 100% of the time. Well, then that's where another person steps in and takes over. But don't say that I'm on a 12-hour shift, and because I've had a long 12-hour shift, that's why I didn't see that, or I was at the counter and I was doing notes and I'm only one person. And yeah, she was only one person and now she's no more. I was doing my job, and all of these cries for help that the medical teams are asking for in healthcare that are not being addressed. It trickles down to the mother. And
so what can we do to reduce some of this? What are some of the strategies we can talk about?
Well, first of all, we need to get to be like Canada and the other schools that don't require payment of their education. If we can get to free schools and we can get to women and men being able to go to school and be properly trained without having to worry about that bill, which is 80% of the conversation when you even want to go to college, you will be able to focus on your care. I have a mentor that has been birthing longer than I've been alive, and she is chief of the medical school in Cuba. This woman has had more people on airplanes going to medical school in Cuba from the United States than I think anybody in the world. And do you know there is a 98% success rate in women and men that she is trained in Cuba? But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about that there's more OBGYNs in families in Cuba than there is in the medical community alone in Cuba. We're not talking about that. There is no death rates like this in it. I mean, if they have a 0.0% death rate of a child or a woman, it's probably gestational, which means the baby was at risk before birth, or the mother was at risk before birth. So to know that is to know that their mortality rates are so low, but we're not studying those countries. We're looking at the socio side of it, or we're looking at the political side of it and not showing the relevance of the maternal care side of it to research it or to at least study it. And we're not looking at what works. We're trying to get more content, again, Instagram mindsets, and we're trying to develop more programming and not looking at the things that work. I believe permanently that people of color, BIPOC people of color, should be able to access full spectrum care. This means, and I'm going to say this slowly, this means that there should be a quality to the care of service in the community that is developed by well-trained, well-paid, and well-languaged workers, which means if you look like me and you're in my community, I should be the one taking care of you. So this is where we need to get back to, get people back into their communities to be able to help people of their communities. And I guarantee you within 6 months, we'll see a difference in that number. But you know, the industrialized, very Judeo-Christian WASP look is really what we're looking at as to the cause and effect to women that look like me birthing.
Yeah. Dr. Ameena Ali, so much, but we got to leave it there. Thank you for being with us. I think it's a great conversation to have. And it's an unfortunate conversation to have, but hopefully we can see some more answers, some solutions, and hopefully we can reduce this maternal mortality rate. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you again.
All righty. Dr. Ameena Ali, our guest here, and as you're taking a break on the social justice forums, we don't want you to go anywhere. We got another guest, another hot topic right after this.